You know, I can still see the whole thing playing out. It's like one of those memories that just burns itself into the back of your brain, right? It was supposed to be the best day of our lives. The day my wife Sarah and I finally got the keys to our first real home, a perfect little place in a community called Cypress Grove Manor. But instead, it turned into an episode of neighborhood warfare. And I mean, warfare with a clipboard. I was standing on our brand new porch, watching this woman, Deborah Sterling, stand planted like a marble statue between Sarah and the front door, literally blocking the threshold. She wasn't just casually leaning there. She was a human roadblock, arms crossed, chin tilted high, like she was personally defending the gates of Buckingham Palace. Her outfit was already a clue, a blindingly white pantsuit, tailored so tightly it looked painful, paired with a platinum blonde bob that didn't move even in the summer breeze. And the lipstick? A shade of aggressive crimson that honestly could have doubled as a traffic light. That was Deborah, the self-appointed queen of the Cypress Grove Homeowners Association. "I don't care what documents you think you possess," she drawled, and the sheer condescension in her voice made the bright morning air feel thick and heavy. "No one moves into this community without my personal approval, and I haven't approved you yet. You can't proceed." Sarah's grip tightened on my hand. You could feel all the excitement we'd built up over 3 months of scraping and saving and stressing. It just evaporated into confused rage. We looked down the street and every single curtain was twitching. Every blind was slightly ajar. We were the premier show in Cypress Grove, and we hadn't even gotten a toothbrush inside yet. We thought we'd done our homework, you know. Good schools, low crime, nice yards. The real estate agent had even pitched the HOA as a positive, saying, "Oh, they're very active. They keep the property values stable and the neighborhood beautiful." What she conveniently failed to mention was that active meant Deborah treated every new resident like a petty criminal who needed to clear her personal, unofficial security check before daring to exist in her kingdom. She'd been HOA president for 7 years, and in that time, she'd turned the simple neighborhood group into her own private little regime, enforcing rules that appeared nowhere in the official bylaws and ruling through a network of nosy, scared neighbors. The morning had started so perfectly. The sun was bright, our moving truck was on time, and Sarah was absolutely glowing. That sense of perfect bliss lasted maybe 15 minutes. As soon as the movers started unloading the first sofa, Deborah materialized from behind a perfectly pruned hedge, walking across her own lawn in heels so sharp they clicked against the pavement like a funeral drum. She was armed with a heavy leather clipboard and a stuffed folder, looking like she was about to conduct an unscheduled corporate audit. "Excuse me," she shrilled, and I mean shrilled, a sound that could etch glass. "You cannot proceed. I have not reviewed your application or completed the proper vetting procedures." Marcus, the head mover, a giant guy who looked like he could bench press the truck, froze mid-step. The poor guy had the most bewildered look on his face, like, "Is this a candid camera show, man?" I tried the friendly approach first, the calm, rational, adult method. "Hi, I'm Jake. This is Sarah. I think there's a misunderstanding. We closed on the house last Friday. We're the legal owners now." I even pulled out the closing documents, the heavy, stamped papers that felt like a shield. Deborah barely glanced at them, waving them away like they were a bad smell. "I don't care what the title company said," she sneered with this incredible, breathtaking arrogance. "This is my neighborhood. You should have contacted me weeks ago. Since you didn't, you will remove your property immediately and return once you've completed the proper paperwork." The movers just looked at me. They were caught between following my direction and outright disbelief. More neighbors were gathering now, pretending to water non-existent spots on their lawns, soaking up every word like thirsty sponges. Sarah stepped forward. "And if you know my wife, you know she has this voice, measured, polite, deadly calm. The voice she uses right before she completely loses it. Ma'am, with all due respect, I think you are confused about how property ownership works," she said, her voice dropping slightly. "We own this house. We do not need your personal or the HOA's approval to move into our own home." Deborah's face flushed a deep, aggressive pink, matching her terrible lipstick. "How dare you!" she practically shrieked. "I am the president. I have the authority to keep undesirable elements from disrupting our community standards. You are not moving another box. Then she did the truly insane thing. She physically stepped in front of Marcus, who was holding a heavy carton, and placed her hand on the box, physically stopping the move. Marcus gave me this wide-eyed look that screamed, "Dude, are you going to pay me triple hazard pay for this?" "Look, lady, I don't know your drama," Marcus said, his deep voice heavy with exhaustion. "But these folks paid me to move their stuff, and that's what I'm going to do. Whatever this neighborhood nonsense is, it can wait." That was the trigger. Deborah whipped out her phone and started dialing with the dramatic flair of an old Western sheriff. "I am calling the police," she announced loudly, making sure the entire block could hear. "These people are trespassing, and this company is participating in illegal activity." That's when I snapped. All the stress, all the expense, all the excitement she had just murdered. It just flipped a switch inside me. The part of me that usually keeps the sarcasm locked away roared to the surface. "You know what, Deborah?" I said, raising my voice even louder than hers, making sure every eavesdropping neighbor had a front row seat. "You are absolutely right. We should call the police." I pulled out my own phone, dialed 911 right there on the porch, staring her dead in the eye. "911, what is your emergency?" the dispatcher asked. "Hi, I need to report harassment and the illegal obstruction of private property," I stated clearly, keeping my eyes locked on Deborah. "A woman is physically preventing my family from accessing our legally owned home and threatening our licensed movers. She is also making false reports about trespassing on our property." Deborah's face drained from that aggressive pink to a sickly, mottled white in an instant. She was still clutching her phone, but suddenly, the wind had gone completely out of her sails. She realized she had just been perfectly outmaneuvered. Around us, the neighbors were starting to smirk openly. I knew then this wasn't the first time Queen Deborah had pulled this power trip. The dispatcher confirmed officers would arrive in about 10 minutes. Deborah started rifling through her folder, muttering about regulations and procedures like she could summon authority from thin air. But every glance she shot me was pure panic and rage, a woman realizing she was, for once, not in control. "You have no idea who you're messing with," she hissed, her voice trembling. "I have connections in this town. I know people. You'll regret this." It was so perfectly, utterly comical, like watching a cartoon villain deliver their dramatic monologue before getting hit by an anvil. She was desperately clinging to a fantasy of power that was visibly crumbling in our driveway. When the police cruiser finally rolled up to the curb, Deborah's demeanor flipped like a pancake. She rushed towards the two officers with the sickening enthusiasm of someone greeting their personal cavalry. "Officers, thank goodness you're here," she cooed, her voice all syrupy innocence, a complete 180 from the screeching banshee we'd been dealing with. "These people are trying to illegally occupy a house. They're violating multiple HOA regulations and refusing to follow established procedures." The two officers stepped out. One was a young guy, Officer O'Malley, fresh-faced and clearly new to the drama. The other, Officer Ramirez, was a seasoned woman with the kind of calm, exhausted expression that comes from years of dealing with neighborhood nonsense. "Good afternoon, folks," Officer Ramirez said with professional neutrality. "We received a call about a property dispute. Can you both tell us what's going on?" I immediately handed her our life, the closing documents, the deed, our IDs, and the homeowner's insurance papers. "We bought this house, officer. Closed last Friday. This woman has been physically blocking our access, threatening our movers, and insisting we need her personal permission to live in our own home." Officer Ramirez studied the papers carefully. They were all straightforward, legal, and ironclad. Meanwhile, Deborah hovered a few feet away, clutching her precious HOA folder like it contained the Declaration of Independence. "Ma'am," Officer Ramirez called over to her, still utterly calm, "do you possess any legal documentation that gives you the right to stop these homeowners from accessing their property?" Deborah puffed out her chest, her eyes gleaming with misplaced confidence. "Right here," she declared triumphantly, pulling out a stack of bylaws. "Section 4, subsection 2, paragraph C, all new residents must go through the approval process before occupancy." The silence stretched as Officer Ramirez scanned the papers. Deborah stood there with this smug, victorious grin plastered across her face, waiting for her authority to be recognized. Then, Ramirez looked up, completely unimpressed. "Ma'am," she said evenly, "these HOA bylaws cover landscaping, paint colors, and architectural guidelines. They do not in any way grant you the authority to deny legal homeowners access to their property. You cannot legally prevent these people from moving in." Deborah's smirk instantly faltered. But I'm the president," she stammered, desperation creeping into her voice. "I have a responsibility to protect community standards. These people could be criminals, or worse." "Ma'am," Officer O'Malley interjected, pen poised over his notepad, "are you now refusing to allow the legal homeowners to access their property?" "I'm protecting this neighborhood," Deborah insisted, her voice shrill again. "Someone has to maintain standards. You can't just let anyone move in." That was the moment Officer Ramirez's patience finally ran out. "Ma'am," she said sharply, her tone now clipped and authoritative, "step away from the property right now. If you continue to interfere, you will be arrested for harassment and obstruction of private property." Deborah's eyes darted towards the crowd of neighbors, which had grown significantly. They were openly watching now, phones held up to record the spectacle. She finally retreated a few steps, towards her own immaculately trimmed lawn. "This is ridiculous." "This isn't over. I'll call my lawyer. You people have no idea what you've started." For a brief, blissful 20 minutes, it seemed like the ordeal was actually done. The movers went back to work. Officer Ramirez handed back our paperwork with a kind smile, and Sarah and I exchanged a hopeful, exhausted glance. Maybe, just maybe, we could start our life here in peace. We were naive. 20 minutes later, just as Marcus's crew was wrestling our sectional couch through the doorway, Deborah reappeared. This time she came armed like a bureaucratic bounty hunter, a long metal measuring tape, her cell phone camera, and a citation book. She started snapping photos of the moving truck, measuring the distance from the curb, scribbling notes like a parking enforcement officer on a terrifying power trip. "Excuse me," she announced in her most official, nails-on-a-chalkboard voice. "Your moving vehicle is parked illegally. HOA regulations clearly state that commercial vehicles can't be parked on residential streets for more than 30 minutes without a permit. You have been here for over an hour." I walked over, trying to keep my voice steady, but my patience was beyond threadbare. It was non-existent. "Deborah," I said, trying to hold on to my last shred of calm, "the police were just here. They told you to leave us alone. What exactly are you doing now?" "I am enforcing legitimate HOA regulations," she snapped back, eyes shining with self-righteous vindictiveness. "This isn't about your move-in. It's about illegal parking. If that truck doesn't move right now, I am having it towed." She was already dialing a towing company. "You know what, Deborah?" I sighed, pulling out my own phone for the second time that day. A personal record I absolutely never wanted to set. "You are absolutely right. Let's involve the authorities again. 911, what is your emergency?" "Hi, this is Jake from Cypress Grove Manor again. The same woman who harassed us earlier is now trying to have our legally parked moving truck towed. She was already warned by officers, but she has escalated her harassment. This time, Officer Ramirez showed up alone, and she did not look amused. Deborah was still on the phone, trying to frantically arrange the tow, when the cruiser pulled up. The moment she saw Ramirez, the color drained from her face again. "Ma'am," Officer Ramirez said, her tone sharp as a razor, "did I not already explain that you need to leave these people alone?" "I'm not harassing anyone," Deborah defended, clutching her tape measure. "I'm enforcing parking regulations. Their truck is illegally parked, and as HOA president, I have the authority to have it removed." Officer Ramirez walked calmly to the truck, inspected everything, checked for signs, and verified the city parking codes with her dispatch. "Ma'am, this vehicle is parked legally," she said flatly. "HOA bylaws do not supersede city parking laws. You cannot tow a legally parked vehicle from a public street. If you continue to interfere, you will be arrested," Deborah sputtered, opening and closing her mouth like a beached fish. Then she made her final, fatal mistake. The desperation took over, and she dropped all pretense of procedure. "I don't care what you say," she declared loudly, her voice cracking for the entire neighborhood to hear. "This is my neighborhood, and I decide who gets to live here. These people are not welcome, and I'll do whatever it takes to get rid of them." Officer Ramirez looked at her, let out one long, profound sigh, and reached for her handcuffs. "Ma'am, you are under arrest for harassment and obstruction of property rights. You have the right to remain silent." The look on Deborah's face was utterly priceless, pure, unadulterated shock. She finally realized her imaginary crown had been snatched away and replaced with cold, hard reality. "You can't arrest me," she protested weakly as Ramirez secured the cuffs. "I'm the HOA president. I was protecting the neighborhood. Being HOA president doesn't give you the right to harass people," Ramirez stated calmly, leading her towards the patrol car. As the cruiser pulled away, carrying the now silent Queen Deborah in the back seat, the crowd of neighbors, all those people hiding behind their blinds, erupted in cheers and applause. It was the most satisfying moment of public justice I have ever witnessed. Marcus and his crew finally had a clear path to finish our move. Sarah and I stood in our new driveway, hands intertwined, watching the last of our boxes go inside. "Well," Sarah said with a shaky laugh, "that was definitely not in any of the home buying guides we read." The fallout was glorious and swift. Deborah was hit with harassment charges that cost her over $5,000 in fines and legal fees. More importantly, the HOA held an emergency election, and she was voted out with an overwhelming majority, 87-3. The new board didn't waste any time, rewriting the bylaws to prevent any future power-hungry resident from tormenting new homeowners, and they issued a formal, written apology to us and several families who had suffered under Deborah's reign. As for Deborah, she tried to show up at the election meeting and scream that the neighborhood would collapse without her leadership, that property values would plummet, and that everyone would regret this betrayal. Security escorted her out while she ranted about conspiracies, but for the first time since signing the papers, Cypress Grove Manor finally felt like home. And it only took a police intervention, a few harassment charges, and a massive community uprising to make it so. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with a truly terrible HOA or a neighborhood tyrant who thought they were above the law? What line did they cross, and how did you finally shut down their power trip? Drop your stories in the comments below. Let's talk about where the line is between community rules and outright abuse of power. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you want to hear more stories about real-life drama and unlikely victories.